Yeah, sorry for the little jitter there. The reason I did that was because well, I've been having troubles with the audio for this video. If it goes on too long, then it kind of just stops. I've already made this video twice, and so I'm putting a break in the center so it doesn't get crazy. Now I've talked about warehouses. I've talked about these guys. Talked about. I haven't really talked to you about this, but pretty much for your market, you want to lower your market prices because you have a range that you'll sell at, and then they have a range that they'll buy at, which is lower than your range that you sell at, and your low price and their high price will meet, but they won't always do that. So you pretty much want to lower yours to where it's either even or lower actually than their buying or selling price, so that you make sure you always sell first opportunity. That way you always sell. Um, Another idea is also you want to know how much you want to sell or how much you want to make actually. So like this guy Silk, he takes 24 a year. So that means I can take 24 from him a year. Um, you didn't know this probably, but each of these weavers will produce 6 units whenever they're working at full capacity. So that means I need 4 weavers to make 24 silk. Now that's with a full supply of silk. Um, but I know a lot of these numbers. Most people actually don't. Uh, these guys, the lacquerware makers, the same kind of thing. Most of these buildings are. Just to point out a few that aren't though. Clay pits make 12 units every year. That's why you can have 2 kilns to 1 clay pit. Because they produce 6, they produce 12. Works out perfectly. And actually, your housing structure will, for every resource it uses, will use about 12 resources every year. And continuing down on this theme, we're going to the production places. These silk farms, as you notice, are kind of built. They're kind of cramped. The reason I do this is because I actually tested it a lot, and whenever you notice your silk guys making their silk and whatnot, they actually can't harvest a whole block just by themselves, which is loss of efficiency in the amount of space you have. But if you have these little half ones, and then you have 3 of them, so like this, just these 3 from here down, they'll produce about 12 units of silk every year. So that's enough for 2 weavers to make 12 bolts of silk. And I know that because I built these and I put like a warehouse to the side that had get, and it got all the silk, and I could compare it every year and took kind of like an average. Yeah, I don't have a life apparently. And that's so for the silk. The lacquerware is the same kind of thing. Tea, on the other hand, isn't. It can actually cover the entire distance of its growth and whatnot. It'll produce 12 units of tea every single year. Hemp is the same way. Onto food. For agricultural purposes, you'll notice that actually, like with my warehouses, I told you I didn't have that many. I only have like those like 2 or 3. Actually, generally I have like 4 or 5 in this map, and generally I only have 2 or 3. And really, the reason is you can store your extra food over here. Um, Notice they're growing cabbages right now, growing them right now. I still have cabbages stored here from last year, and wheat from last year as well. So your food doesn't really expire, but you don't have to actually take it to a warehouse to store it. You can just store it at the place they produce it, and then whenever a space at your mill opens up, you can just toss that in there. Either they'll end up just standing right outside your mill, like right here or here. I can't see them. I don't know where they are. Not stopping, but they'll just stand there and stop there, and you'll have enough. See, I have a bunch of extra food for lots of times, and you can just store your extra food here at your farm. You don't need to build all those extra places. It's just a waste of people and whatnot. Um, Generally, whenever I farm crops, I try to only farm 2 at every farm. A farmer cannot cover the entire square, so you can't just put just wheat down here and just um, cabbage down here. You have to kind of put half and half, and so that they can cover a half of their farm. Another idea is to put down 3 strips of crops, and all I have to say to that is though I don't have the option on this map. I wouldn't do it unless I couldn't fish or hunt. I can fish and hunt on this map, so I definitely don't. If um, if I had three crops, I wouldn't on this map. If you couldn't fish and hunt, you would actually need to. So I have 2.5 farms on this map. I would actually put an extra farm down and make the center another crop, like melon or something. And normally you only need two crops though, because remember you only need four different varieties of food to make appetizing food for. Actually, I think it's three, but you know, four plus spices for these guys, right? And then you want to make sure that you don't produce extra or whatnot. Otherwise, you're wasting, you know, production capabilities and whatnot. Wood. Wood actually is a finicky building. It produces around 13. If, like, let's say it was just one guy right next to this thicket by himself, he produced 13 on his own. But since there's so many in the distance they walk, it'll decrease efficiency. So they'll produce, depending, like, I have a bunch. So depending, but I have another trees up there. So depending on the way it's done, they'll produce between 11 to 13 units between them for every single one, because the plants regrow and it works out that way. So I have to say, you know, you just and it's always these are all numbers for max efficiency if you have everything filled up, which is really important to try to keep you have a little bit more employees available than you actually have jobs. Otherwise, you'll start having losing efficiency, so you won't produce the six you need, and then you'll run out of silk. Like you'll have full on agriculture, but you won't have enough weavers. You won't produce enough silk. You'll sell off all your silk, and then your elite housing will go away. Alright, so you don't want that to happen. You want everything to stay casual, flow, nice, and then you want to make money so that you can make like 30,000 a year, like I do. And this is just actually, this is about not you start out with, and this isn't actually my most efficient city. The most efficient I ever got is 90,000, I think, which is 90 or 100. I can't remember exactly. It was years ago. And yeah, you want to make sure that you try to do efficiency to the max, which do the best you can. And that's basically all I have to gotta say.